It's unusual that you're talking about a player who is currently playing as being one of the best players you've ever seen. More often than not, that's a little bit rose tinted in the past of what you have seen. But certainly in my time looking at it, he definitely stands in among the best players.
The GAA Hour is sponsored by Paddy Power. For exclusive content from their GAA ambassadors and other high-profile contributors, check out news.paddypower.com.
So we're going to talk about Wexford and Kilkenny here because it is a local derby. It is a huge game. We'll talk about Tipperary, Limerick too. Whether I put it in this section or not depends how long we go on this. So, I saw Davy commenting after the Carlow game, and he was talking about playing in patches, and he was saying we started the game well, but whatever happened, our lads, we stood off. And we're doing it in a few matches. We're losing a 10 or 15. We're losing a 10 or 15 minute patch. We can't afford to have those patches. So, it's always weird with teams I've been on, and suddenly sometimes you'll be talking about, you hear players say, oh, well, we concentrated on a good start, and I don't know any team that doesn't want a good start. And all these things you talk about, you drift out of a game and then you drift back into the game. Is this just a natural progression of games? Or can you actually work on, going out of a game for 10 minutes? It's not something that's easily fixed.
I think you've got to try and find the causes of it first, Wooly. And if the causes, if you can identify what that is, it may very well be you don't have much control over that. So, for example, after 15 minutes, you have concentrated in the first 15 minutes, and you've contested everything, and you've really raised the intensity level and the work rate and all of those things, and you're at the very least competitive, and the game sort of neck and neck with the opposition. And then after 15 minutes, the other team seems to just get a toehold in the game and gets a flow into their game. Has that been because they've changed their game plan and switched things around and you haven't reacted to it? So there could be things like that you need to be really, really aware of, and you need to be sort of know beforehand. What's your solution to this? So, for example, if somebody's playing a sweeper and they push the sweeper up the field and he's knocking over a couple of pints or something like that, look, you're going to have to do something to do with that. So those things are fixable. The second thing that's fixable, you should know earlier than that, and that is concentration. So when you focus on the first 15 minutes of a game and that's your message to the team, which is not a bad message, but what happens for the next 15 minutes? Because in the player's heads, he has been fully alert now for 15 minutes. And then suddenly, I don't need to be fully alert now for the next 50 minutes. That's the message you're giving. It might be, a light message that you're giving him, but that's what he's hearing. So your concentration levels drop, and you will see that. You're wondering then why the corner forward is beating the corner back out to the ball. He's only getting a step on him, but actually he's got the step in the head. His mindset is he's just not as alert. Can you deal with that? Well, then we're going back now to a show we had a couple of weeks ago. That's where your sports psychologist really comes in. What's the I suppose little reminders, I can't think of the actual word here, Willie, at the minute, that keeps you mentally alert right throughout the game, and that is not just at the start.
Here's a quick one for you then. The way we concentrated on a good start, the amount of times you hear it, and I hear it recently. Is that a bad message to a team, considering what happens if you don't get that good start? Do you know what I mean? If you're depending on this good start, is it a good idea to focus in, lads? We have to get a good start here. You know what I mean?
No, it's not. Is the direct answer to it? Woody.
I didn't think it was,
but there would be sometimes. And look, I just keep qualifying myself here. I much prefer the sports psychologist expertise to explain this, but certainly they certainly wouldn't agree with that. There may be times you will want to use it. For example, if the opposition is going to, if you're fragile and you go down in the first 15 minutes and they score 2 or 3 goals and you're gone out of the game, well, look, your fragility will really show then. So it is important that you get a strong start to the game and that you're in the game, and you might set up structurally. You're wondering sometimes why teams play with sweepers and all of that. A management team has considered a whole lot of things here, including historical things that has happened to the team. And, you may be just in a fragile state and you need to just keep yourself competitive for a period of time so the team builds up confidence and self-belief and then goes at it again. And they may be the discussions that you would have. But just to give a message of, we need to start intense here. We need to work really hard for the first 15 minutes. So what are you going to do for the next 15 minutes? Those messages can be mixed messages to teams. I think
it's amazing how many players come out afterwards and say we were concentrating on a good start.
I think, Wooly, I suppose that's where the depth of information that you have about your team is really important. That wouldn't be good for an immature team. But if you have a team that's with great leadership in the team, or a team with very experienced players in the team, they can interpret that message exactly what it is. It's the interpretation of the message that's really important here. So if a young team comes in and they just take it at face value, manager has after been biting my ear here and he wants me to really rip into this team and this player and my player for the next 15 minutes, first 15 minutes here, and establish my dominance and superiority over them, and look, whatever happens after that, we'll work that out then. That wouldn't be good. But I think if you have leadership in your team, they understand the message here. The message is that don't let this team get a physical dominance over us or a psychological dominance over us in the first 15 minutes, knowing full well that once we get to 15 minutes, we're going to choke them after that. That's they're different. I think it depends on the team that you're actually working with.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. So Lee Chin was doing media this week, and I thought he made a couple of good points tactically about Wexford. He says, I know people think we play negative, but we think we play very positive with regards to the way we attack and how many players we get forward. Sometimes it's a case when we're training that we have too many lads up forward and there's no room up there, and you're complaining and telling the wing backs to get back down the field at times. And I thought that was a gas comment, in that the whole thing's negative, and Lee Chin is like, Jesus, stop streaming forward, go back, I want a bit of space up here. So like I know there has been some analysis done on Wexford and the amount of players they get forward, the wing backs especially. I'd love to see where that develops from, because we know in Gaelic football, if you turn a team over around the 45, it's very easy to get those numbers pouring forward, whereas if the turnover is back on the full back line, you still have to work it up a long way, and that kind of breakaway score isn't on. So you'd like to understand a little bit more about Wexford in that, where their scores originate from, and is there a bit of consistency in, like, if they turn over a ball around midfield, or wing backs take off and suddenly then, you know what I mean, they have a little bit of momentum on that. I don't know if there maybe is some analysis could be done there, Cheddar.
Again, Wooly, I just keep going back to this point, and I just don't want to do that, but it's just so important to make. It really depends on the resources that you have, and the games, the way you play the game and that. But first of all, I just thought it was really good that Lee was positive about the Wexford game plan, because your belief in the game plan and your confidence in that is just crucial, particularly when you're running systems and game plans and that. If you don't believe that, well, look, you're going to get a flat performance out of that. We might talk that a little bit later on. But I can understand his point, and let's just think of that for a minute. And let's just look at it, and maybe look at a different team. Although, look, it would apply to Wexford as well. You're looking at Lee Moog McGovern, you're looking at Conor MacDonald. Just take Conor MacDonald for the example, and let's say you pop in high ball to him and he wins it in front. He doesn't want extra players around him. He wants as little players. He's going to turn around, eyeball his man, and break the tackle and go by the shoulder. And he should be free on goal at that stage. He's in the full forward line. He doesn't want extra players around him just because they're there, blocking him up and that. So that's what we're always trying to do with defence, is to block up the space, as you know, in the football as well. It's the same thing. We're just trying to block up the space as much as we can. And when you do that, it's difficult for quality players then to play. And I'd probably draw the example of Tipperary. Tipperary, I suppose it's what Lee Chin is describing is the opposite to creation of space. And I said this before, the best article I've seen on the creation of space, and really to do with what Limerick are doing, and was Christy O'Connor's article. I think it was a very, very good article on what's the key point of the way Limerick plays. It's creation of space. Well, you have too many players up there. If that actually happens, well, look, there's less chance of being able to make that work for you. Hence, a lot of teams, why are they dragging wing backs back to field? Of course, it's a defensive screen and a defensive strategy. It's also trying to suck out your wing backs to make more space around Gillan and Graham Mulcahy and these real dynamic, quick players. They want space around them to be able to make things work. First of all, to go collect the ball, so it's not a competitive ball. And second of all, when they have it, they have space to be able to work on and make their own space. So I'm interested in that.
Wexford are probably the only team where you see wing backs going that far up the field without the ball, or even soloing the ball. Usually you see wing backs taking long range shots, and maybe they have a little bit of defence in mind as well. But Wexford wing backs and midfielders can pop up on the 21 metre line.
They can, and look, I'm going to say that I think that this is where hurling will eventually go. I think the positions will be so dynamic. You will always have 6 backs or 5 backs or 4 backs, but the interchange, particularly of half forward lines and full forward and half back lines, will be really, really fluid and really, really, really quick. So you might always see 6 forwards up front and 6 backs at the back, but they may not be the 6. They may not actually be the same 6 at all.
Yeah.
So I think you will see interchange of positions much more over the next couple of years. And I think, the next change, I suppose, or the next system, I don't want to use the word system, the next method of play, you will see that the change and the interchange of players will be much more dynamic and fluid than even we're seeing now. And that's much more than in other years. There's one other point I'd make, Wooly, in terms of the 7-up. I was up in Dunlyle last year at Antrim and Laois and Antrim, and Antrim had a toehold in the game. I think they were maybe 4 or 5 points up, playing with a breeze, and Laois put a sweeper back to field, and Antrim put their extra man up on the sweeper.
Yeah.
And it left 5 defenders against the breeze, 5 defenders and 5 Laois forwards. Now that is very, very risky, because when you put the ball to space and you have quick forwards and to go for the ball, the inclination of the back is to foul the forward, because he knows he's no support behind him. So I suppose it just proves the opposite of it just backs up what Lee is saying here, that forward needs space, but when you put too many players up there, you choke up space. That game, after about 10 minutes, Antrim, I think, were maybe 4-1 up or 5-1 up. At half time, Laois went in against the breeze 2 or 3 points up, due purely to Antrim sending their player up the field. And look, it might work in other situations. I'm not saying anything against an Antrim management team for making that decision, because other people might make the same decision. But that's the risk you play when you put too many people up on one side of the field.
Yeah, no, that's an aggressive move, all right. But if you were doing that, I suppose you'd be asking him to pull him out some bit, get over on the wing and not just be blocking it all up. What do you think Wexford are going to do with TJ? Jeez, he's in some form. Like, he's almost unmarkable. James Breen has done a good job on him before, but he's obviously not there anymore. You'd imagine Matthew Hanlon will be pairing off on Walter Walsh. They like a good battle anyways, the two of them, if Walter is back in. You'd imagine Davy's going to have a plan. He tends to get his defenders all to mark their men, because they'll have Foley back there sweeping anyway. So there'll be none of this dropping off stuff. Wexford don't do that. That's the difference with their game plan, obviously.
Yeah, and that allows you to do that as well. You can man mark tightly. It's touch tight marking, and then you have your man to offer assistance to it, or even second tackler. Well, look, they've handled him pretty well over the last couple of years.
Yeah. I think he did well in Nolan Park. Was it last year or the year before? Yes. In the second half only, but he doesn't have a great record against Wexford.
No, and that's the point. Like, I mean, it's real in the face marking, and I think was it JJ made the point here on Monday that whoever's on him won't mind too much about how much ball he plays. It's just get the ball to the floor. They can kick it out. It doesn't make any difference. Just don't let TJ get the ball. I just wanted to back up, I suppose, Willie, first of all, TJ, and there's been an awful lot spoken about him. Look, it's unusual that you're talking about a player who is currently playing as being one of the best players you've ever seen. More often than not, that's a little bit rose tinted in the past of what you have seen. But certainly in my time looking at it, he definitely stands in among the best players. And if you just compare him with other counties, and I'm going back a number of years here, if you're looking at, in my time in Tipperary, in my time in Tip, Jimmy Dial was the best player I ever seen. I was very lucky that he coaches a club on a county level when I was playing myself, and I just saw at first hand the skills that he had. He was an incredible player, probably the best hurler that I would probably ever see. In Galway, the likes of John Connolly, I know he was a midfielder in his earlier part of his career. Look, Cork had a whole pile of them, obviously going back to Ring. We didn't see, but they have a whole pile of quality forwards there. But just take it within Kilkenny itself, because that's enough a test for any player. And if you want to just look at DJ and Henry, in my view, TJ is probably better and has more influence on the game and is more important to Kilkenny, certainly at the minute, than either of the two lads. And that's a fair statement to make. Yeah. And if you want to go back a little bit further into that, you can certainly go back to Billy Fitzpatrick's time in terms of a real quality, skillful hurler who was able to manage all aspects of the game. And Kilkenny had some hard men as well. Pat Delaney from Johnstown would have been related to JJ. There were some seriously tough men played, but I'm talking about the real skillful players that influenced the game. And you'll probably go back further than that, and you'll probably go back to Eddie Kerr in Kilkenny, who is sort of generally regarded as the best Kilkenny forward that's ever played. I think TJ is on a level with him now, and he still isn't finished. And I know from listening to older people, they'd go back even further to, Kilkenny people will explain this an awful lot better than I would. Go back to Lowry Marr. I remember a couple of old people I was speaking to that they thought Lowry Marr was God. I'm going way back to the 30s or the 40s here. To think that, people generally speaking have those that type of respect for those type of players after they have finished hurling. People now have that respect for TJ. He's all of the skills. And I thought Brian, explained it really, really, really well on Monday in terms of the key parts that he has that probably other teams don't have. But the influence he has in the game isn't massive. And now I'm going right back to the start of your point, Willie. It would make sense to try and stop his influence on the game because at this minute, without him, somebody made a comment coming out of Kilkenny the last day. What if TJ wasn't playing for Kilkenny last Sunday and Joe Canning was playing for Galway? It was probably a 20 points difference of a game, to be honest with you, and now we'd have a completely different view of Kilkenny going to Wexford Park. So it makes sense for Wexford to do that. Wexford have handled it well. They can change around markers if they want to do that. You're right, Matthew O'Hanlon probably will take Walter, because I'd say he'll definitely be playing if he's able to play at all. And they'll take the chance on TJ. The difference with TJ though is a little bit different than other players, and he reminds me a little bit of Henry Shefflin in this. TJ might start out at 11 or he might start out at 12, but he probes weaknesses in the opposition team. And he'll move to that, and he'll find that out, and he'll go for it. And I just think he's just intelligence, and his game intelligence within the game itself to probe out areas that he can influence is really, really interesting to watch. And I was actually surprised last Sunday, and we might just talk about Galway a little bit, that he didn't actually go in on John Hansbury, because I thought John was he was just having trouble in that game, and he probably just didn't go that far. But I'm really impressed with him. So the point I'm making about that, Willie, is that he makes himself a little bit hard to mark at times, because you might have a tight marking back, and the next thing you see TJ, he's playing out in the middle of the field, picking up ball and all of that. So is your back now, is he looking comfortable out in the middle of the field, or is he heavy legged out there, or is he way out of position here? So there's a lot of things to think about when you're thinking about TJ and how you're going to handle him. But you do have to handle him currently with Kilkenny, or you're going to risk being way too close in the game coming down the wire.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just like, I suppose it's his aerial ability and his pace and his fitness. Like, it's hard to find a back that can match up to those three things. And then obviously the skill levels. We'll get to predictions next. I want to talk about Limerick Tip, because this is probably the one I'm looking forward to most. Like, this is some physical matchup here, isn't it? Like, this is a heavyweight battle now that Tipperary have come up to the plate, and they have the physical players that can put it up to Limerick in that middle third.
Yeah, no, it is. Look, assuming that both teams will go hammer and tongs for it, and I think they will.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot around momentum, that when you have momentum, and Tip definitely have that at the minute, don't burst that bubble unless you have to through injuries or something like that. So I think they will. Bear in mind it's in Thurles as well, and Tip won't want Limerick to beat him in Thurles.
I don't think Sheedy's that type of man that would say, lads, it's not the end of the world if we lose this. You couldn't imagine him saying it, could you? It wouldn't be in his DNA. It's
a very, very dangerous game to play. What you could do, and what Tip might do, but I don't think they will, because they're just they may very, very well be playing Limerick in a Munster final, and they'll want to win everything, and so will Limerick. And I think Limerick will fancy themselves. Incidentally, Limerick always love playing Tip and have a good record against them over recent years, and we'll look forward to going in to test themselves. But back to your point, Willie, I think you're right. The physicality and just that physical size of players is going to be an interesting game, and there's definitely going to be big hits go in here from both sides. And look, Tip won't be found wanting when it comes to that either. They will pride themselves on their aggressiveness and their physical hurling, probably above any other county. So I think that's going to be good. And even when you look at the matchups, I think what's going to be really interesting is that how Tip match up. I don't think Limerick will change. I think they'll play their team. Okay, they might have one or two different players in different positions, but I think the same type of player will be in those positions. But Tip did change the last day for Clare, and they got it absolutely spot on. So I think the first matchups obviously is in the Tipperary full back line. So what will Limerick go with? They're going with Casey, Gillan and Mulcahy at the minute. Very, very quick, darty players who like a little bit of space to work around, but if they get that space and their conversion of scores and all of that is very, very, very high. And of course, they're allowed that space a little bit by the two wing forwards working back the field and maybe stuck in your half-back line up a little bit further than what you'd like to go. So, will Tips go again with Barry Heffernan full back? Well, look, he has the pace to play that, and he obviously has a game under his belt now. Carl Barrett has really raised his game and likes that type of man-marking game. Could be on the likes of Peter Casey.
He's a good matchup for Casey.
He's a good match. He is,
Mulcahy,
yeah. And if they'll stay with Sean O'Brien or whoever's going to be on in the other corner,
Flynn.
That'll be interesting. Or it could be Flynn, exactly, on the other corner. So that could be interesting. What I think will be the other part that will be really interesting is who will Limerick play on Michael Breen, because in William O'Donoghue they have the ideal file for him. Another tall, almost the very same as Michael Breen. So that could be a real match up there. And obviously Cian Lynch and Noel McGrath are almost identical players. Real intelligent, real skillful. And real players that can really spot opportunities in the match to make things work for you. So that could be a good shootout between the two of those. The one thing that I'm really interested in looking at is, obviously Garrod Hegarty and Tom Morrissey, or whoever the two wing forwards are, generally speaking, will work back the field and make themselves available for ball or fight for ball. How will Tip handle that?
Yeah.
Certainly they won't want their wing backs going up the field and leaving all the space in front of Mulcahy and Casey, as we've said earlier on. So they're not going to go up there. So is Liam going to go with Bonner and with Dan McCormack?
You'd imagine they'll have to pick them up, yeah.
Well, if it is, there's going to be a very busy piece of hurling in the middle third, and it's going to be physical. And Garrod Hegarty and Dan McCormack, could be interesting. You mightn't want to be too close to them because it'll be definitely tough.
But then you see, this is the knock-on effect with Limerick. Dan McCormack and Bonner are going to have to drop and pick them up. They're leaving Diarmuid Burns and Paddy O'Loughlin or whoever. Maybe it'll be Dan Morrissey, and they're completely free and they can hit long range points. So you're kind of
that just brings me to the point, Wooly, that the crucial thing I think for both teams is the use of ball by free wing backs. And look, Paddy Maher can score, Ronan Maher can score, Brendan Maher can score as easily as Diarmuid Burns can. So the use of the ball there and the precision of the type of ball that they want to use, if they're distributing it or if they're going for pints, that we're not just shooting, Hail Mary shots and that they go wide and we lose a little bit of confidence. I think it's going to really, really come down to that. What's the quality of the platform that you're trying to work off of?
Yeah, you have to nearly take that chance, don't you? Leave the two wing backs free. You could even push one or two from your full forward line out on them and leave the two free on the full back line maybe, and that's kind of all what you're trying to do. What's Declan Hannon going to do with Bubbles? Because this is the thing, Declan Hannon never follows his man in, and the reason he doesn't follow his man in is because of the three half forwards are dropping in. That's a war zone. He lets them on, but Bubbles is too clever for that. He won't drop. He'll drop out to the wing. He'll drift left and right rather than out and in. Do you know that kind of way? Bubbles is too clever to be heading out into that battlefield. I wouldn't be going anywhere near it myself. If Bubble goes left and right and Hannon can't let him go left or right.
Well, this is where I think it's really, really crucial, because just think of the move before that. Brendan Maher gets the ball and Bubbles makes the run to take the pass to hand, because that pass to hand is going to be a point. You simply cannot leave him that type of freedom. This is the old Noel McGrath problem as well, playing out in the middle of the field. You cannot leave him free out there. It's a point every time. Bubbles will score 2 or 3 of those in a row. Suddenly you have a toehold in the game and tip her off. So I fully agree with you. You may very well see now a full forward line with a longer range of running or mobility or whatever you want to call it, in terms of working back the field and then being able to get back in again when the ball is coming in there. So the timing of that and the working of that and the understanding of that. You may very well be looking at John McGrath or Shamie Callan. Or Shamie Callan's a very, very good case here, because he has really upped his game off the ball here, and his ability to track and tackle. He's mad for work. So you will probably see Seamus Callan certainly picking up Declan Hannon or getting close enough to him to put pressure on him, in terms that he's not going to be able to pick the pass up the field to players and that. So I think the game will hinge on that, if both teams set up as we suspect they will, and if both teams are actually going for the win here, which we suspect they will. I think it'll be an incredible game. I think coaches will be dying to go see it, because there'll be a lot of things going on here that they'll want to pick up on, and certainly the the coaches and the I suppose the intelligence of the coaching on both teams is probably of the highest around Ireland at the minute, and it'll be very interesting to see.
Yeah, it definitely will. I actually don't think this will be a classic at all, because I think they both hunt in packs and they both bring such a crazy level of getting the ball back. I can see it being maybe, scrappy clearances. Although I think why Limerick will win this is because they'll be able to pick out their men cleverly, whereas Tip might resort to clearances under that savage pressure. You nearly with Limerick, the way they hunt you, you've no choice but to get it on down there. You can't be too clever with it.
Yeah, and Tip backs are good at handing over, Limerick backs are good at handing over players. Tip rely a lot on that run to space, put the ball to space. It might be a diagonal ball across the field, then it's not going to hand, but it's going to space to really quality players. One touch the hand, pop it over the bar.
Do you need a bit of time to deliver that good ball? Limerick won't give them that.
Well, see, this is the point that we're sort of making earlier on. Like, will Brendan Maher, Pádraig Maher and Ronan Maher be free because their men are pushing up the field, and those men are now covered by Tipperary? So I think it is going to depend a lot on that. If they set up like this, that the use of the ball by the half back line and the pressure that they're put on and delivering that type of ball will depend a lot. I think it will on the way the game will go. I think it will be a classical game if the scores flow. That the pressure is not so much on the man and the ball that we're missing shots and that type of stuff. I think if the forwards get enough freedom to score, then I think it'll be a really, really good game. And I think it'll have all of the components of a good game, including being very, very physical, which a lot of supporters want to see. And I don't mean over physical. I think just the physical hurling that a lot of people look for.
Yeah, no, I definitely think they'll get it in that one.